Hi, I'm Heidi with Onigo Stamping. Welcome to my craft corner. Today I have another installment of the Craft Box Challenge video series to share with you. If you missed the first video, make sure you go back and watch it and you see all of the supplies that I put in my craft box, a very limited amount of supplies that I'm going to use to make 8 to 10 cards over the next couple months. Today I have 2 cards to share with you and a gift box, all using supplies just from my box of supplies, which go back and see, it's a very small amount of supplies. Before I get started, if you have any questions or you would like to order Stampin' Up! Products, would like to attend an online class or host your own event, I'd love to help you with any of that. Go ahead and leave me a comment or send me an email and let me know how I can help you. All of the dimensions and more photos of today's projects are available on my website, and the link to my site is in the description to this video. If you like my video, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Okay, Onigo, let's get stamping. Okay, so if you remember, I am using just the supplies from my box that I set aside to make all of the projects for my Craft Box Challenge. And those supplies included the Sweet Strawberry stamp set and the punch, and then some cardstock and some inks and basic supplies. If you want to see those, make sure that you go back to the first video in the series and you can see everything that I put in the box. I'm going to start with a very, very simple watercolor technique for my first technique. And I'm just going to take my clear block. And if you remember, I only get one clear block for this challenge, which is one of the hardest parts about the challenge. So I have a piece of basic white thick cardstock, and let me see, it's 3.5 by 4 3/4. And I just have the leaf stamp from the Sweet Strawberry stamp set, and I'm going to ink it up with the Granny Apple Green stamping spot. So I'm just taking that and inking up my stamp, and I'm going to stamp this multiple times across the bottom of my cardstock. And you don't have to worry about the center not looking very nice because we're going to cover that up. So I'm just making I'm going to make like 2 clusters of leaves. So put one over there, and we'll start the other one on the other side. So there we have a couple of clusters of leaves on the bottom of our cardstock. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean off my ink, clean off my stamp, because I'm going to have to switch stamps in just a minute. So we'll go ahead and clean that off. And now I'm going to take my watercolor brush, and it's not too wet, it's just a little bit wet. I'm just kind of wiping it off to get water on it. And I'm just going to color over the leaves. So it's just a little bit wet. It's not super, super wet, and I'm not really squeezing more water into it. Just occasionally picking up a little bit of that water that I put on my clear block. And just coloring over that. And as you can see, as it starts to dry, it just kind of, soaks into the paper and kind of smooshes out the ink a little bit. So that's very quick, just to give it kind of a more watercolor look to it, kind of blurs the edges. Now I'm going to take a scrap piece of basic white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp some strawberries. And grab my strawberry stamp. I'm just going to wipe that water off. And for this, I'm going to use the Flirty Flamingo Stampin' Spot. I'll show that to you. There's the Flirty Flamingo Stampin' Spot. And just like before, I'm going to ink up my stamp and just stamp that. And I want to stamp 3 of these. clean that stamp off. And we'll switch this out for the top to the strawberries. And I'm going to go back to the Granny Apple Green and stamp 3 tops in Granny Apple Green. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to punch these out. I find my punch. I'm just going to trim these out individually so I don't have to worry about accidentally cutting the images as I punch them. Oh, too close. So just trim those out. Okay, so I have punched 3 strawberries and 3 tops, and now I want to go ahead and do that same watercolor technique on these. I punched them first because once they get a little bit wet, you'd have to wait till the paper dried to really punch them out, because otherwise the paper would tear. So just going to go over those very quickly with just a little bit of water. Just to kind of soften them up a little bit. So there are my 3 strawberries, my 3 tops. I have the bottom here. And then I want to make this a birthday card. So let me clean off my stamp again. And we'll switch this out to a happy birthday message. So happy birthday, you sweet thing. And this I'm going to stamp with the Flirty Flamingo. And I'm just going to stamp it on the top of that basic white. So just like that. Now I'm going to just tear the bottom of this just to give it a little bit more, I don't know, interest to it, something a little bit different. So to get a nice even tear, you want to keep your fingers close together. And just give it a good tear. I remember it used to be really the fashion to tear your cards all the time. So then we're just going to mount this. So I'm going to take my green glue and put some glue on there, and then stick that right on this piece of Flirty Flamingo cardstock. And what am I going to do with these strawberries? I'm going to start by putting the tops on my strawberries. just putting some glue on the leaf part. So now I have 3 strawberries, and I'm going to grab my Stampin' Dimensionals. I'm going to start with 1 strawberry and just put it on. Oh, look, it still has sticky note on it. I'm going to put it flat on the card. So this one is just going to go right here. Just like that. And then the next one, we'll put some Stampin' Dimensionals on it. Kind of let them go off the edge. Now I just have a piece of Granny Apple Green cardstock. We'll fold that in half. And we will use some Stampin' Dimensionals to put our card front right on this. So there's my first card using a really simple watercolor technique where I just colored over my stamped image. Isn't that cute? So that's card number 1. Let's go ahead and move on to card number 2. I'm just going to clean up a little bit. I'm going to start with a piece of Flirty Flamingo cardstock that is going to be the card base. And I am just going to start by taking the small flower, and I'm just going to stamp it with some Flirty Flamingo on my card front. And I think I'll stamp it twice each time. You have to be careful when you are double stamping and you're stamping off the edge of your paper that you don't stamp part of it, the part that was off the side of your paper, onto your card, because you'll get both a dark image. The image will be half dark and half light. So I'm just trying to make these flowers look like they're kind of falling diagonally across the front of my card. Just like that. And then I want to stamp a couple of extra ones. This is a little bit of scrap, and I am just going to stamp 3 more of these little flowers right on here. 1, 2, and 3. All right. And we will punch those out in just a minute. I'm going to clean off my stamp so we can move on to other things. And this is where we get into the watercolor technique for this card. So I'm just going to take my clear block, and I have a piece of basic white cardstock here that is 3 1/4 by 3 1/4, and I am just going to put Daffodil Delight ink all over my clear block. Just get that nice and inky. And then I'm going to take my watercolor brush, and I am just going to rub that around and get some water on there. Ooh, you got lots of water. So just kind of want to spread it evenly out. And now I will take that clear block and I am just going to set it right on my cardstock. Just like that. So isn't that a fun background? Really fun little watercolor background. So let me see how I want to do it. Yeah, maybe like this. Well, it's hard to decide, like, which direction should I make it. All right, let me wipe off my clear block. And then I'm going to grab that birthday greeting again, and we're going to stamp that right on the top of my square here. And I'm doing this with some basic gray ink. So I'll just stamp that right here at the top, and I'm going to let it kind of go just off the edge, just a little bit. So just like that. Clean that off and switch stamps again. And now I'm going to grab this leafy image and my Granny Apple Green ink, and we will ink this up. And I'm going to stamp this towards the bottom over here. Just like this. All right, I'm going to clean it off. Put that stamp away. Now I want to add a little bit more green to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of Granny Apple Green right there on my clear block. I'm going to pick it up with my watercolor brush, and I'm just going to color in those leaves. Just to give them a little bit extra green. So there's that. And those get colored nice and quickly. And then I want to add these flowers. So I'm just going to go ahead and punch them out with my punch. So get that one. Oh, that one went flying, so we will we'll stamp that one again. All right, here comes the second one. I'll try to save it from running away. So there's one. Oh, look, I already had one here. Maybe it didn't fly. Very confused. But I'm going to grab the third one. So now I have punched out those 3 flowers, and we're just going to add those to this front here. But first, I want to glue this onto a piece of Granny Apple Green cardstock. So just going to use my green glue for that. I got a little bit too much, so let's just push that towards the center a little bit. Spread it out. And we'll just put that on the Granny Apple Green. Just like that. And this is going to go on my card front. With a little bit more green glue. Or on my card base, I should say. So there's that Flirty Flamingo card base that we already stamped. And I'll go ahead and just glue that on the front there. And hold that in place for just a second. And then I want to come back in with my Stampin' Dimensionals. And I'm going to put a Stampin' Dimensional on the back of each of these flowers. And the Stampin' Dimensionals fit very nicely right in the center. Actually, we're just going to put it on 2 of the flowers. So the third flower, I'm going to go ahead and put that flower on first with just a little bit of green glue. And we'll add that to the branch over here. And then we'll add the second flower over top, and I'm just covering up those green flowers that got stamped right on there. And that is the third one. So there is our second card. Our second little sweet birthday card. Isn't that cute? With those beautiful pink flowers and this fun watercolor technique on the background. All right, let's go on to the third project. For my third project, I'm going to make a fun little box. So I have here some different pieces of cardstock, and I have a piece of basic white cardstock that is 3 1/8 by 6 1/4, and I've scored it at 1 1/4, 2 1/8, 4 1/8, and 5 inches. And I'm going to start with the larger of the two outline flowers and the jet black StazOn ink. And I am going to stamp this all over this piece of cardstock, but I'm going to leave a few spaces so that I can come back with the smaller flower and fill those spaces in. So there I have stamped the bigger flowers. Now I'm going to clean the stamp off and switch to the small flowers and fill in the rest of the space. All right, so I've covered that whole thing with small flowers. I also have an additional piece of cardstock. I'm just going to stamp 3 small flowers right on here. I'll go ahead and set that aside. I'm going to clean off my stamp and put it away. And now I want to do a little watercolor technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the Daffodil Delight, and I'm going to put some Daffodil Delight ink. Don't worry, that StazOn is just kind of stained on there right now. I'll go back in with some rubbing alcohol later and I'll get that off. And I'm just taking my watercolor brush and picking up some of that yellow ink. And now I'm just going to color in about half the flowers. All right, I've colored a whole bunch of Daffodil Delight flowers, and now I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of Flirty Flamingo. We'll put some of that on my clear block, and then we'll color in the rest of these flowers. Okay, I've colored the rest of those flowers with Flirty Flamingo. I'm just going to wipe out my brush a little bit, and then I want to color in a little bit of the space in between them. So I'm just going to grab some Granny Apple Green ink, and I am going to very quickly and sloppily color in the space between the flowers. I'm not going to worry about getting all the way in. We're just going to do a basic idea. I'm going to leave some white space there. It just kind of looks kind of fun. All right, now I have colored in all of those spaces in between the flowers with some Granny Apple Green ink as well, and I'm just going to set this aside for just a moment. I'm going to come back to those 3 flowers that I stamped earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and punch these out with the Strawberry Builder punch. So we'll just punch out all 3 of those. And these I want to color, one of them Daffodil Delight, and the other 2 are going to be Flirty Flamingo. So we'll just get a little bit more ink on my block over here. And I'm going to start by coloring in the Flirty Flamingo one. I think I might have still had a little bit of green in my brush there. It looks kind of orangey. All right, so there's my Flirty Flamingo ones. Wipe out my brush a little bit. Come in with the Daffodil Delight. And fill that one in as well. I'm going to come back to these in just a minute and give them a little bit more color to them, but we're going to let them dry just a little bit, and we're going to add a little bit more color to get some shading on them. All right, I have a piece of Daffodil Delight cardstock. This is 4.5 by 3.5 inches, and I have scored it at 3/4 inch on each of the sides. I'm going to come back in. I'm going to come in on 2 of the sides and cut along that score line to the next score line up. This is going to get folded to create the bottom of the box. It's just coming in and then on the other side and doing the same thing. And now I'm just going to cut out a tiny little wedge on the smaller side on each of these. So just a teeny tiny little wedge. I'm sure it's hard to see because it's so small. But just like that. Now we will go ahead, fold these sides in, and get ready to glue this together. Just give those all a good fold. And then I'm going to come in with my green glue and put a little bit on these two, on the outside of these 2 flaps here. Probably got too much glue on here. Try to spread it out a little bit. So then these get folded in and folded up. I'm just going to hold that. And this side will get folded in and folded up too. Just try to get those in there nice and square, and just need to hold them for a second until they adhere to each other. And try not to get glue on my fingers. So now I'll do the same thing on the other side. Just add a little bit of glue and a little bit of glue over here. And then we'll fold those flaps in as well. And fold them up. And once again, just going to hold that for just a second to get those flaps to really adhere inside there. So once that's all glued down, then we can take that piece that we stamped and we're going to fold all of those score lines towards the inside as well. Now, if I had a bone folder in my craft box, I would take a bone folder to all of these edges, but I don't, so I won't. We're going to take my little box bottom and we'll set this right here. I'm going to take my green glue and I'll just put those out of the way. Just put a little bead of glue right along that edge and then a little bead of glue along this edge. I don't want to glue in the bottom of the box. I just want to glue the sleeve to each other. So we'll set that down and then bring up the other side and just hold those for just a second to hold them in place. Now I have those 3 little flowers that I stamped earlier. I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit more color to them. So I'm coming back in with my ink and we're just going to do a little bit of shading on the outside and kind of the center just to give them a little bit more shade. Coming in with a pretty dry brush here and just a little bit more ink, so it's going to be a little bit darker. I'll wipe out my brush and I'll grab some Daffodil Delight to do the daffodil one. And just like that. Now you can see this box. And I'm going to use the Stays on Black and I'll stamp my birthday greeting on here and we'll adhere the whole thing together. But I'm just going to pull out my final product and show you what that looks like. So, because I think you can see all the pieces. So let's take a look at the final product. This is what it looks like. Just stamp the birthday greeting on there. I added those flowers, and you can see that this one and this Daffodil Delight one here are both up on the Stampin' Dimensionals. Now, what is inside this box? A couple of Ghirardelli chocolate squares. So yum, yum, what a sweet thing, and to give happy birthday sweet thing. So let me show you the 3 projects that we created today. We have 2 fun birthday cards, and then a cute little box full of candy surprise to share with somebody. Weren't those some great projects? I hope that you will come back and see me again for my next installment of the Craft Box Challenge, as well as other videos that I do put up from time to time. If you like this video, make sure that you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and come back and see me for more tips, techniques, and inspiration. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.